Share again, okay?
Okay, yes.
All right, so good afternoon for me, good evening for other people, good morning for some. Debate. She, for the last 20 years, have embarked on her yoga journey, and she completed the first basic part is called basic certification at that time with Sonia Sumar. I remember that. I was in Yogaville a
Yes,
long,
right.
long time ago. She is actually in the video of Shira. She was in that
Shira.
training. That video, she was one of the participants in that training. So
Yes.
as a PT, it opened many doors as she immediately began to integrate yoga into her PT programs with children. Her initial training evolved into several advanced yoga for the special trainings with Sivakami and additional therapeutic yoga studies from a variety of renowned teachers include Great Kraftsow, Jo Fetterly, Jivana Heyman, Lana Reed, and Cheri Clampett. I'm sorry. Over the years, Brenda has taken her yoga therapy to a deeper level, applying both the philosophical and the scientific methodology of yoga to her physical therapy and yoga sessions to better support her clients in their health and wellness journey. She's going to be sharing some highlights of the yoga and physical therapy working together. So welcome, Brenda. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to move my view. Whoops, I think I did something. All right, well, thank you so much, Sivakami and Sonata, for inviting me to be part of this exciting, amazing conference celebrating diversity in children and adults, and just sharing with all of you and learning from all of you our experiences. So really, it's really an honor. So thank you so much. So as Hanato was just saying, thank you for that introduction. I did my first course back in 1999 in Yogaville. And I was interested because being a PT, I'd been starting to do some yoga in Seattle. 99 yoga was just becoming somewhat available, and it was hot yoga. So I had started at a hot yoga studio in Seattle, and then I saw this little ad in the back of the yoga journal that said yoga for the special child, and it was way before we had availability to look on social media. I mean, there was no, Facebook or no whatever. So I thought, wow, this looks really interesting. So I talked to my boss, and she was really supportive, helped me write a grant, and I was off to Yogaville for I think like 9 days. It was like quite an amazing journey. And so in my mind as a PT, I thought for sure it was going to help with me having new tools, new skills to work with kids in their physio programs, as far as their physical body strength and balance and all of that. But what I didn't expect was just what a life-changing experience that it would be, both for my own practice and my own being, and my connection and relationship with children. So it was a very exciting and I would say overwhelming time for me, because I came back and I'm like, wow, I've just so much now to do and share. So anyway, that was in 1999. And then as a PT, I went on and got my adult yoga certification and continued to study with different teachers with different focuses, like with more physical yoga for backs and scoliosis and neurological impairments. And then a few years ago, I studied, did the longer training with Jivana Heyman in accessible yoga and became an accessible yoga teacher and trainer for the accessible yoga community. So that opened up a whole nother different area, working more with adults. And a lot of the children that I work with, I'm going to see now. Can you see my screen right now? No.
No, you're not sharing anymore.
Okay, let me. Okay, now. All right, okay. So yeah, so I just started trying to share some of my different ideas and things with children and with the accessible yoga piece. And so currently I do private practice where I do yoga, individual and group, and also physical therapy and integrating yoga. And then I work part-time in a school district where I have the opportunity to do a lot of yoga in classrooms, a lot of individual work with students. And in this crazy time that we're living in right now with the schools, so up in the air with in-person, remote, kids need yoga and need regulation ideas and activities even more. So I feel like it's been really helpful for teachers and my work in the schools to be able to offer more help with that regulation piece and bringing yoga into the schools too. I also just wanted to mention I do some short workshops with my colleague and friend Mary Feuer. She's an OT. So when we do workshops, we focus on in healthcare settings usually and in school districts. So trying to bring yoga into two of those settings where we find a lot of professionals are really interested in learning more about yoga. Okay. See there. Sometimes my clicker seems to have a delay. So yes, this is one of my first little clients that I worked with, and we'll be talking about her a little bit as we move on. But she was definitely one of my very first. But I think the next slide has my very, very first client. This little guy was 6 weeks old when I first saw him. And it was after, probably 2 or 3 months after coming back from Yogaville and with Sivakami. And I think what was so cool about this, because again, this was back in it would have been 2000. The nurse, when he left the NICU, the nurse handed this book to his parents, and she said, I have saw this program and wanted you to have this book, and I think that I think Jonah could really benefit from this. So his parents, I don't even know how they searched me out. I think back, we had on the website that we had practitioners. So anyway, Sivakami, this is my first little guy. He is now 21 and just, amazing. Of course, like we all have many stories of our kids that are now adults and all that, but wanted you to have that little piece of him. So the next few slides just tend to be some of the goals of physical and yoga therapy that I tend to work with families and children when we're talking about what's important to them in their life and in setting things that they feel like would help them just be more happy and be more functional. So thought it was a way to kind of organize things that maybe when you go back, if you are a therapist or a teacher and are looking in this way of maybe more physical peace. Okay. All right, so of course, we all know as yoga practitioners how this piece is, I feel like is really where it's all about, as far as improving that connection, improving the breath awareness in making connections in our body and our mind. And with the kids that I work with, I tend to work with all different types of diagnoses and conditions, but I do work with a lot of people that have differences in their muscle tone. So I have found the breath awareness and working on breathing has such an impact on releasing muscle tension and in helping kids to be more comfortable in their bodies and to be able to actually use their breathing at times when maybe they are more anxious or more less control in their body. So I have found that to be so significant. Also, of course, in the respiration and speech production in the school district, I work with OTs and speech therapists and teachers. So when we're teaming and I talk about breathing and breath support, it's something that even if someone's not connected with a yoga philosophy or yoga approach, if I'm talking breath and breathing, it really makes sense. It's concrete. It's something that they can be really open to and thinking about how much that makes a difference in our own bodies and our own mind and being more calm with different strategies, but also then for our and in the school district, we do a lot of sensory, what I call sensory toolkits. So I try to help teachers have strategies that can be available to kids all the time when they need a break or when they need to do something to help them feel more focused or more relaxed, or just to feel more present. So I always talk about there's a lot of great tools that we can use as therapists, but that the yoga piece, having your breath and your body, are tools that are always there. We always have our ability to breathe and our bodies with us. So helping teachers use more of those beginning yoga strategies, I just feel like it helps to plant the seed. So if someone hasn't done any yoga or maybe just, explored a little bit here, if they grasp onto one little thing, it can just help the process take off and grow and help, share all those great benefits of a yoga philosophy. So a couple other things, like with energy, also a lot of my kids just are tired. Maybe they haven't eaten before they come to school, or some of my private clients have a weaker body, less stamina, and the breathing exercises they can use different things again to help them be more strong and be more alert and focused. So, and again, I know all of you have lots of experience with this, but just trying to speak from my perspective as a PT, things that I try to remember and think about when I'm doing a yoga program. So I spoke a little bit already with this next goal that I really look at is as far as improving postural control and managing muscle tension. And that might be that spasticity, that higher tone person who has kind of tightness in their bodies, but it might also be someone that's just very weak and low and just, again, has a harder time being engaged because they're weak. So interesting story with this little girl on the top. She was probably 4th, 5th grade when I started working with her, has cerebral palsy. And she would get a lot of clonus and muscle spasm mainly in her leg and her ankles, where they would, do a lot of movement. And she learned how her yoga breathing and movement, that she could manage that and could control it. And it was huge for her because it would happen really frequently, especially when she'd been sitting for longer periods in her wheelchair. So she, would come back to yoga. I saw her, I think, once a week, and she would come and tell me, how, oh, my yoga breathing has done help me do this and help me be able to just feel better. And I think it also sometimes she would be embarrassed because her leg was shaking and she was, so anyway, those things just have had such an impact on so many different students that I work with. The girl right below, Lola, she, I'll talk about her again more later, but she had started seeing me when she was probably about 2 and has diplegia, cerebral palsy, with more involvement in her legs. And she would also, with my help and the modeling of the breathing, be able to integrate her breath and her movement to help her move in and out of positions more easily. She also was receiving outside PT separate from her yoga therapy with me. And her outside PT had kind of become at a block roadblock with where Lola was moving in her progress. And Lola wanted to be able to move, but she was really kind of stopped more in a floor position, couldn't get herself up and down to standing. And so we, in our yoga program, we were working a lot on just moving from I call it a modified pigeon, to her side sitting position, and then up into kind of a frog squat. And all of a sudden, one week, things just clicked for Lola, and she was able to get from the floor up to stand with the support of her furniture. And it was just, her mom, was crying, and Lola was, and again, we were using, and who knows, what's really happening in our body mind connection, but we know that it's integrating and making all kinds of connections. And I think with the yoga program, along with her PT, it just was starting to really help her with her awareness and acknowledgement of what her body was doing. So it was really cool just to see those things happening. So that's one, another really big goal. Then kind of right along with that postural control and helping manage our yoga muscle tension with yoga comes working on increased strength, stamina, endurance. So through breathing, through chanting, through asana, just depending on the individual, there's certain things that I always find to work more with different students, but the full program can really help with overall that stamina piece. So if I'm working with someone that has more tightness, more spasticity in their body, we tend to work through slower movements and linking some of the simple poses or vinyasa style yoga, where we just really are improving in their motor learning and their overall body awareness. So they might be doing 2 or 3 asanas with breath, but moving the repetitions, moving in and out, where it's really starting to make connections and help their body feel more comfortable in that movement. It might be, say, moving from sitting onto like a hands and knees cat-cow position, and they might just really play with that movement and connecting it with breathing. Then if I'm working with someone that has more significant weakness, low tone, we might do more energizing, faster movements. We might hold postures longer, or count the number of breaths that we're holding a position. Whereas some of those strategies, they might not be that helpful for someone that has tightness, because they might tend to get either fatigued or kind of stress in their body, and you might see different movement pieces occurring. But it's, of course, it's all individual and it varies day to day, but these are just some ideas and different things that I wanted, to share with you. I do use some props also, sometimes like with the kids that are really working on strength and lower tone, we might add holding yoga blocks, say between our thighs or our legs to engage the lower core, to engage the pelvic floor. I find that can be really helpful with some of my children with Down syndrome, because if their lower muscle tone, when they're sitting and even in their gait, their legs can tend to abduct and rotate at the hips. And if some of those opposite muscles are not being engaged, then you can have some patterns that can develop into later childhood, adolescence, and adults. So really working those opposite muscles, the insides of the legs, the pelvic floor, and just doing simple things like holding kind of a squishy ball or a light yoga block between the legs during some of those different asanas can really be helpful. Okay, and then the next, these next couple slides for me as a PT are really, really huge. Like I feel like this is, and again, it's all, really, really important for me as my work with children. But when I'm thinking about our independent skills and being able to function more in our world, that I think the yoga can really help kids improve their functional life skills. So we know that it can help them feel more confident. If their balance is improving, they're maybe not falling as much or not fearful of falling, which just the fear of that piece can be as detrimental as the actual fall, because it is affecting, we know, our mind and how our anxiety is occurring. In mobility type things, as far as transfers, moving from a chair to the bed, moving to a classroom chair, doing a toilet transfer, just all of the different movements that might be challenging to children and adults. I a lot of times look at how different asanas can really help them think about like, oh, if they're in their wheelchair and they want to move up to stand, that they're doing like a chair pose up to Tadasana, up to mountain. And I find these things, especially with the carryover from families, families will say, oh, it's just amazing how, Isabel was able to do that when I mentioned, oh, stand in your tall mountain. So again, I just feel like from a perspective as a physio and a yoga therapist, that there are just so many more ways of being able to integrate meaningful activities into one's life, and provide some really great tools that are lifelong. Then I just listed a few more, like if I'm working on walking or working on stepping, maybe just stepping up and down off the curb. It could be something like moving from a mountain into a warrior one. So in therapy, we might be using those yoga asanas more, and really talking about it and feeling it in the body with the breath. And then it can carry over more into life outside of the work with me. I have a couple really, I think, interesting and just great stories. I have one little guy, Max, who loved yoga. He was in middle school and would help me with yoga class. He had autism. Had extreme anxiety, and one of his biggest areas of stress at home and at school was using the bathroom, was using the toilet. He could become constipated for a number of days, and especially at school, would never ever want to go into the bathroom, and then was something that was also happening at home. But he really liked using his breathing in other areas of his day. And we called it the candle breath for him, where we would ring a bell and he'd reach up, or the whole class would reach up, and we would slowly blow out the candle. And for this young man, he would use that when he was starting to feel frustrated. He would do self-talk and he would say, oh, candle breath, and he would do that. So we started integrating that into the kitchen area and then the bathroom area at school, and always talking about taking a big breath, doing your candle breath. And it eventually led where he was comfortable enough going into the bathroom, because he wouldn't even do that before. And he was telling himself, take a candle breath, take a candle breath. And then he was able to, one day he sat down on the toilet and he actually had a bowel movement. So, and then it carried over at home. So it was just, again, an example of how it can impact positively all aspects of our life. And for his family and for Max, it just made him be so much happier and so much more in control. So I thought that was just kind of a cool little story. And another one that I always like to share is a little girl that has autism and CP, who loved doing her chanting in her sessions. And one day she was leaving her daycare, and her friend, or one of the little kids in the daycare, was across the room, and he was tantruming, had totally had a meltdown, was really having a challenging time. So Annie ran over to this little guy, and she took his hands and she brought them in front of her with her hands, and she just took a big breath and she did a and then the little boy looked at her and was just like, didn't really know what she was doing, but he started, to just kind of calm a little bit. And then Annie left and her mom was waiting for her, and she just said, Johnny was having a hard time and he just really needed an om. So, I think when I hear these stories, and they might not seem like, physical therapy, but again, we know that it's all related, and what the work that we do is so important, and just generalizes out to all aspects of our life. So if we can be more regulated from an early age and learn those tools, it will just really be helpful. So the next goal, this is still just continuing thinking about functional life skills as a therapist, as a OT-PT teacher, working with kids with special needs, things that we, of course, want our children to be more independent with, things like eating and dressing, and being more independent in their mobility. So these are just, again, I'm just kind of breaking down things that have worked for me. It's just kind of my perspective on some things that might be helpful in your work with children, but looking at some of the specific asanas and how they can help a child in their home with maybe with dressing, maybe with being more flexible in their hips in the butterfly pose, where kids can get their hands to their feet so they can take shoes and socks off, and even just exploring their body and knowing that my feet are beautiful, and I have them. I mean, I always remember coming back after one of my first classes and doing hugs and kisses or wind relieving pose with kids, and always remembering Sivakami talking about hugging this knee and giving it a kiss, and then we have to make sure we're giving the other side also a big lots of love. And so I felt like sharing all that with children just helped them be so much more appreciative and aware, and just knowing that they have a beautiful body and that they really can connect with it. let's see, it was one thing I was going to say about that. Oh, the little girl that that is shown in these couple slides also has CP, walks with a walker, and her mom always tells me that when they do things, well, she uses yoga all the time, but in her daily life, but she said things like when they go to the doctor's office and the doctor will want Isabel to do something, to move in a certain way, or can you do this? And Isabel doesn't really make that connection or understanding, and then mom will say like butterfly. I think that the doctor wanted to check her hip range of motion. So her mom said, Isabel, just do butterfly. And then she sat down on the doctor's table, put her legs out like that, put her feet together. And, and the doctor's like, wow, she really knows yoga. That's really cool. So, I mean, again, all, maybe little things, but not really little things, because it's helping, it's just spreading the word with both the medical community and also, how it's integrated into one's life. Let's see. And then I think the next slide, we've talked about this some already, but just the piece of emotional regulation with being able to have tools for relaxation, for calming, for decreasing pain in the body if someone is really feeling and something happening, a spasm. So of course there are so many different ways that we can do this, and because I work in lots of different settings, I try to pull from all kinds of different toolboxes. But back to, I think, what I mentioned earlier, if I can help teachers and parents to remember, you always have your breath and your body with you. So being able to use some of those skills or some of those tools at different times throughout the day. Parents that have used audio, sometimes I have recorded little relaxation stories with some of my kids, and they use it at nighttime for sleeping, or just at different times when they need a break. And on the other end, like we talked about earlier, using some of the breathing and different movements for more alerting and calming also. So I think this is the last kind of goal area that I was going to mention here is recreational opportunities. As a PT, I'm always trying to help my families and my students figure out things that are meaningful, that are extracurricular things that will bring them joy, and that will just be something that really they are able to make a connection with. And I find yoga just has worked in that way for so many of my clients. This child that we can't really see in the slide, but she was a teenager when she started working with me, and her mom had tried a lot of different things like swimming and gymnastics, and nothing really clicked for her. And then they had heard about yoga, and they had gotten my name, so they came and we started doing yoga. She particularly liked doing partner yoga, and she loved doing all aspects of yoga. But she and her mom got a partner yoga book that I already had here, and we had been practicing some partner yoga. And Heather started doing all this yoga with her mom at home, and then she'd come back the next week and she'd show me new poses, and she and I would do some partner work together. And then she started teaching yoga at her high school after school. So she took that upon herself to, I think her teacher helped her get it organized, but then she was staying after school and teaching. And she has Down syndrome, and she was leading her high school little yoga classes after school. So I thought that was just really, really cool. And another child that I wanted to mention was a girl with CP. who had, her name is Maddie, and she had lots of different therapies in her life. She had probably a therapy appointment almost every day. And she saw me for yoga. I mean, it was a yoga and PT, but we always said it was yoga with Brenda. So when she was at school, her mom would tell me these things. She'd say, Maddie, of course, isn't that excited about telling people about her other therapies, but she's always excited to tell her friends, oh, I get to go to yoga class today. And, was just like so excited because, everybody once wanted to do yoga. It was becoming, more popular. And so for her, it was just kind of life just made a big change in her life because it was something that other people were doing and she wanted to do it too. And it was so meaningful. Sometimes she'd bring friends with her and they'd get to join in the session and we would do a small class together. And then part of this has been a few years ago, but part of her session, and I wanted to mention this because of Sivakami and Hinata, but one of Maddie's interests was dance and music, and she was like a preteen. So we thought of the idea of doing yoga choreography, which of course came from my participation from Yoga for the Special Child. So Maddie would pick out the music that she wanted to do, and then we came up with different asanas that both she had one-sided weakness in her body. So we picked a lot of things that would definitely require both sides and crossing midline and flexibility more on that, well, on both sides. But so she would put that all together and was so excited about her yoga dance. And, I just thought like that was something that I learned from my work with Sivakami and has been really, really fun and cool for kids. Let's see, I think I have a few minutes left. The next few slides are just in workshops that I'm doing for therapists, usually we'll spend like an hour or two on this, but I just wanted to put it out there and I know you'll have the handout and it might not be a new perspective or it might be. I like to put yoga, make connections with yoga and development. So when I'm working with therapists, especially if a therapist isn't familiar with yoga, and I talk about how it can support a developmental motor approach, or if you are an OT or PT speech therapist and you're familiar with neurodevelopmental treatment approach or an NDT approach, it totally fits within the same physical piece. So I like to just talk about alignment and promoting all the different movements in the spine. So if we're thinking back bending, it's extension, and forward bending, it's flexion, and rotation, it's twisting, and lateral flexion, it's lateral bending. So with that piece, then we think about the movements in different positions: prone, supine, sitting, standing, and maybe where kids are getting stuck or blocked, like I mentioned Lola earlier. And then putting that piece together with yoga asana can really be helpful for children. So the next couple slides, and again, usually I have people practice these and we don't have time, but maybe at home you want to go through and move through some of these developmental. So thinking about the newborn and its child's pose. So I'm going to just go through these quickly because of time, but I just wanted to kind of put this out there, and it might be new way for you to think about yoga asana and a neurodevelopmental approach with children. And maybe if kids are really strong in their back bending, but they're really weak in their forward bending or in their core and their flexors, it can kind of give you an idea of where you might be thinking of moving towards. So 5-month-old is working more on back extension. Also, if they're on their back, it's a time when they're doing exploration into midline, working on reaching for their feet, developing lots of core work. And then it just is going to take us up along. So 5 to 6-month-old, exploring different seated positions. And And again, giving the yoga piece that might translate and support where we're at in development. A 6-month-old is working extension through the whole body. So coming up into what we might call that Superman position in therapy, or more of the locust work. Long sitting, again, this is more of a transitional, can help us move out of sitting onto our hands and knees. Moving on up into a more of a mobility, beginning to push up hands and knees, moving around our downward facing dog. We talked about this earlier and how it was such a kind of life changing movement for this little girl. And she would move from her pigeon pose, moving over into kind of a cat-cow position, and just make that connection in her movement. And then moving on up into independent standing and mobility. So the 10-month-old being able to stand up, kind of a pull to stand, maybe from a yoga chair pose, up to mountain. And then lots of one leg balance work, moving into our knee to chest, tree pose, and beyond that, being able to take steps, reaching side to side, our Trikonasana. Here, this little girl is doing it at the wall for some stability and a yoga block, but she's still moving in that area of the spine that she rarely would use independently. So her lateral flexion or lateral bending. And the young woman at the side is someone, she's now in her 30s. She was working on more gait type things. So she would be stepping and working on her balance there with that. So that was really fast with that whole piece with development, but I wanted to put it out there because I think as a therapist or teachers working in classrooms or different programs, it can be kind of an aha moment as far as thinking about development with yoga. And the next couple slides are just talking more about accessibility. And some of this came from more of my work with Jivana, and really thinking about making yoga really accessible for everyone, and meeting, that connection, meeting them where they're at, using appropriate props to help create a safe practice, safe and supportive practice, especially helpful if we're doing a mixed level, a group class where you might have some children in wheelchairs, some more mobile. And of course, we've talked about standing poses, how we can practice those in different positions, backline sitting. I like doing standing poses in a tall kneeling position, because sometimes kids have the ability to stand up to, say, do a Sundance from standing, but it's still, they're very apprehensive, or can cause some hesitation. So sometimes I practice those things in a tall kneeling position, so from my knees, and then working up into stand. And I'm using inclusive language, really focusing on being inviting and not very directive or more authoritative in your language in how we're working with children. And you're remembering, of course, we all know this, if you can breathe, you can do yoga. And this slide, I just like putting in, talking about accessibility, especially in the schools. I might have kids that are in different classes and using different types of devices. So here's, say, mountain pose from a chair perspective. Here's mountain using a walker or a gait trainer. Here's someone in a stander. I have a lot of kids that use standing frames throughout the day, and it might be the time that we're happen to be doing a yoga group. So again, just being flexible in our thinking about how we can be accessible with our practice for kids and promoting promoting that through different ways. This, I think I will just kind of talked about this, and again, it's probably nothing new. I will mention in the classrooms, a lot of my teachers use a breathing ball and a chime in the school district because it's something that they can bring out and help kids take big breaths. They can use the auditory chime for some mindfulness activities, maybe some just taking deep breaths or doing a mindful walking activity, mindful moving. And these cards, it's Paul Morose is someone that I've worked with. And I wanted just to mention, if you're looking for some yoga cards that have diversity in the illustrations, that he's done a really nice job with having these cards available. So that's his website. I think now they are also available on Amazon, but just wanted to show the illustrations because he's done a really nice job with that. So I think I'm about done here. This one I just wanted to show is changing the orientation of a pose. So always think about how we can look at a movement in a different way. So instead of sitting upright in our seated staff or wide angle, you might change the orientation totally and still receive benefit from that pose in a different way, but with good alignment. And this, here's the girl that I talked about earlier, of course, is what, you know, we know that it's truly at the heart of yoga as far as those connections that we are able to develop and support for ourselves and with others. And I think the last slide that I just thought maybe, I'm sure you all you know, have this in your practice, but I just thought maybe we could end with this. I use this in my yoga session still, so it's been 20 plus years. And so I thought maybe together we could just say this, or you can join me. So I am peace, I am love, I am joy, I am light. I have a beautiful light inside my heart that God gave to me when I was born. Because of that light, I am not afraid of anybody or anything. Om Shanti. I'm going to.
Thank you so very much, Brenda. That was very nice. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, guys, we don't have time for questions.
Oh,
we ran out of time.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Sivakami, do you want to say anything?
Yes, thank you, Brenda, very much for. Have you been back to Yogaville after you attended the program more than 20 years ago?
I have not, but you know, last year I was looking at a program. It might have been Cheri, one of Cheri Clampett's programs. And then I think with the pandemic and everything, you know, that didn't happen. But I really, yeah, I really.
Guys, do you remember that video with Shira?
Yes.
So she attended that program. Since that, she never came back again.
Shira never came back?
No, you.
Oh, I never came back to Yogaville. I came back. Yeah.
Yeah. So Brenda was in that program with Shira. Amazing, that, right, Brenda?
And there was a hurricane.
How did progress during the week, huh?
Oh, I have pictures of you and Shira from that time. And yeah. So Shira must be 40.
I have been in contact with her. She is 41 now, and she's doing good. She's doing good. So Brenda, I wanna really thank you very much. I appreciate and keep up with your good work. Please send Jivana say hi to Jivana for me.
I will. And
thank you very much, Om Shanti Om.
Thank you. And please, people, email me with questions. I'm sorry that we went over. Really.
Okay. On the chat, I remember, Brenda, you have access to the whole conference to the website that you
Okay.
sign up for. And there is a discussion panel, so you can always go to your talk and see if there is any questions and you have time to answer them from there. Okay.
Brenda, have you been in any of our other conferences?
No, I just signed up this morning, so I'm going to be.
We have, this morning, we also have one beautiful one about physiotherapy and yoga.
Oh, good, good. I will watch it because we have access.
So be in touch. Very
All
nice.
right, guys, you know the drill. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to kick everyone out.
Brenda, again, thank